Some researchers trace the first controlled fire back 2 million years to early members of Homo. Others reject that claim entirely, calling the evidence circumstantial at best. Every site in this cold case comes with a question mark attached. So we start where any detective would. Not with an answer, but with a 2-million-year-old crime scene nobody can fully verify. Every disputed site in this investigation falls into one of two categories, and detectives must never confuse them. The first is fire use, evidence that early Homo simply took advantage of flames already burning nearby. The second, far harder to prove, is fire making, evidence that someone deliberately created that flame. That distinction is exactly what makes the 2-million-year-old claim so difficult to close as a case. Roughly 3 million years ago, East Africa's climate turned cooler and drier. The forest retreated, and the savanna spread across the landscape. That shift changed everything for early hominins, pushing them into open grassland thick with dry brush. Wildfires would have become a constant presence, not a rare event. Deep inside Wonderwerk cave in South Africa, investigators found something a wildfire could not explain. Charred bones lay far from the entrance, past any point where wind-blown flames could reach. Dating placed them at 1.79 million years old, among the oldest fire evidence ever recorded. Someone, or something, carried that flame into the dark. At Koobi Fora, Kenya, investigators found sediment stained red, baked at temperatures between 200 and 400 degrees Celsius. That heat signature points to Homo erectus, roughly 1.5 million years ago. But red clay alone cannot testify to intent. A wildfire could scorch the ground just as easily as a hearth, and the case file grows only more circumstantial. At Chesowanja, Kenya, the class themselves raise the stakes. Hardening red clay like this demands temperatures of 400 degrees Celsius, no lower. The dating places these clasts at 1.4 million years old, younger than Wonderwerk, but still deep in the cold case. Yet the file stays open, unproven, another exhibit without a confession. The trail jumps continents in 1985, landing in Yunnan province, China. At Yuanmou, investigators uncovered blackened mammal bones dating back 1.7 million years. That discoloration looks like burning, but blackening alone proves nothing to a careful detective. Without a controlled hearth or clear intent, Yuanmou joins the file as another unproven exhibit. A careful detective must rule out every imposter before naming a suspect. Wildfire ash drifts and settles, staining soil without any hearth beneath it. Volcanic tuff bakes clay red across whole landscapes, mimicking the very signature investigators found at Koobi Fora. Erosion, too, can concentrate blackened fragments far from where they burned, muddying sites like Yuanmou beyond 1.7 million years of doubt. Some detectives skip the hearth entirely and read the evidence in teeth. Homo erectus molars shrink noticeably compared to earlier hominins, a change some researchers date to 1.8 million years ago. Smaller teeth suggest softer food, and cooking softens food better than anything raw ever could. It is indirect testimony, but in this cold case, even a molar can testify. Follow the shrinking molars further, and a theory takes shape. If cooking began 1.8 million years ago, it did more than soften food. Smaller guts need less energy to run, freeing calories for something else entirely. That surplus, some researchers argue, fed the growth of a larger brain. The detective's evidence gets smaller with time, down to microscopic wood ash. Scholars point to these traces as support for fire use by Homo erectus. That evidence places Homo erectus using fire roughly 1 million years ago. It stands apart from Wonderwerk's charred bones and Koobi Fora's red clay. Investigators at Evron Quarry, Israel, turn to an unlikely detective tool: artificial intelligence. Researchers, including scientists from the Weizmann Institute of Science, ran spectroscopy analysis on 26 Flint tools in 2022. The results showed heating to 600 degrees Celsius, far beyond anything a wildfire leaves behind. That heat places controlled fire use between 800,000 and 1 million years ago, long before Evron's flints were ever excavated. The trail now leads to Trinil, Java, far from Africa's savanna. There, investigators found burned wood layered alongside Homo erectus fossils, the famous Java man remains. Dating places this wood between 830,000 and 500,000 years BP. Yet wildfire remains a stubborn suspect, and Java's volcanic landscape only deepens the doubt. Deep in a cave at the Daughters of Jacob Bridge, Golan Heights, investigators found something no wildfire could explain: heated fish teeth. Dated to about 780,000 years ago, they mark the oldest likely evidence of cooking itself, not just fire-making. A meal, not merely a flame, sits at this crime scene. The suspect controlled heat precisely enough to prepare food, deep inside a cave far from any lightning strike. The trail circles back to the same bridge, but the charge shifts. At Bnot Ya'akov Bridge, investigators' date claimed fire control between 790,000 and 690,000 years ago. The suspect this time is named directly Homo erectus, or perhaps Homo ergaster. Critics still demand harder proof, and the file remains open. Deep inside Zhoukoudian cave in China, investigators catalogued burned bones stretching from 460,000 to 230,000 years BP. Layer 10 held hearths alongside Homo erectus fossils, evidence detectives once called airtight. Decades later, skeptics reopened the file, questioning whether the ash came from wildfire seepage rather than deliberate flame. The cave that once closed the case now sits back on the suspect board, evidence and doubt tangled together. The investigation moves to South Africa, into a site aptly named the Cave of Hearths. Burn deposits here span an enormous stretch, from 700,000 down to 200,000 years BP. That range covers multiple hominin species and countless generations of fire use. Unlike Zhoukoudian, the layers stack up consistently, but detectives still ask the same question: deliberate flame or repeated natural intrusion? Suffolk soil hides another marker at a site called Beeches Pit. Investigators applied two separate methods here: uranium series dating and thermoluminescence, both converging on 415,000 years BP. That agreement matters. Two independent clocks rarely lie the same way by accident. For detectives building this timeline, Beeches Pit stands as a rare point of consensus rather than dispute. The trail finally reaches solid ground at a Neanderthal site in eastern England. Investigators catalogued burnt soil alongside hand axes cracked open by heat, dating to roughly 400,000 years ago. Two fragments of iron pyrite lay among the debris, a mineral no wildfire could deposit by accident. Here, at last, the asterisks fall away. Geologist Andrew Cunningham Scott offered a different kind of evidence in 2018: the strike itself. Scott proposed that deliberately striking flint together to spark fire may reach back 400,000 years. This method leaves no ash, no charcoal, only cracked stone bearing the marks of repeated impact. It shifts the detective's focus from the burn to the tool that caused it. Professor Chris Stringer of the Natural History Museum offers the detective's final motive. He states that instant fire was crucial for people moving into places like Britain 400,000 years ago. Without it, survival in such cold territory becomes a far harder case to argue. The pyrite fragments finally answer why Neanderthals needed that certainty. The trail crosses into France to a site called Terra Amata. Investigators there uncovered an actual fireplace, complete with ashes. Dating places it somewhere between 380,000 and 230,000 years BP. Unlike scattered clasts or stained clay, this hearth looks deliberately built. Hungary offers the case its next puzzle piece, at a site called Vertisolos. Burned bones there date to roughly 350,000 years ago, placing them firmly within the contested timeline. No charcoal turned up alongside them, though, leaving investigators without their usual corroborating witness. The bones speak to heat, but they refuse to name the fire that made them. The investigation crosses back into France, to Escale Cave near Saint-Estève-Janson. Investigators there found not one hearth, but 5, dated to 200,000 years BP. Multiple hearths in one cave suggest repeated visits, not a single accident. The detectives note this pattern, fire returning to the same spot again and again. Kalambo Falls, Zambia, delivers the case's most complete set of remains yet. Charred logs, charcoal, and carbonized plants turned up together, dated to 180,000 years BP. Radiocarbon dating and amino acid racemization both confirmed that timeline independently. Wood this well-preserved rarely survives natural wildfire, giving investigators a stronger witness than ash alone. At Pinnacle Point, South Africa, investigators found a different kind of fire use entirely. Toolmakers heat-treated silkrete stone, altering it before napping sharper blades. This practice dates back around 164,000 years, part of the Still Bay culture. The Still Bay record itself stretches from 164,000 to 72,000 years ago, showing the technique persisted for generations. The trail now delivers a suspect investigators didn't expect: our own species. At Jebel Irhoud, Morocco, burned flints sit beside skulls identified as early Homo sapiens. Thermoluminescence dating places those flints at roughly 300,000 years old. The witnesses and the fire, this time, share the same address. By 125,000 to 120,000 years ago, the case file stops asking whether modern humans used fire. Evidence turns up at site after site, spanning the globe, no longer isolated or contested. Investigators now treat controlled fire as nearly universal among our species, matching how common it remains today. The detective's question shifts permanently, from proving fire's use to explaining its spread. The investigation returns to Israel, to Qesem Cave near Kfar Qasim. Here, fire use isn't a single disputed layer, but a habit. Investigators date regular fire use from before 382,000 years BP to around 200,000 years BP. That span covers over 180,000 years of continuous use, not a one-time flicker. The trail moves to France, where dozens of Neanderthal hand axes carry unusual wear traces. Investigators match those marks to repeated striking with pyrite, dated to around 50,000 years ago. This wasn't accidental damage from cutting or scraping. The pattern suggests deliberate spark making, tool in one hand, pyrite in the other. Beyond Barnham, detectives closed the case file on one more site in northern France. Occupation there dates to 50,000 years ago, placing it firmly among the investigation's youngest confirmed entries. Unlike the ambiguous ash and reddened clay of Africa's oldest layers, this site offers investigators a clean verdict: deliberate fire-making, no asterisk attached. The timeline of doubt finally narrows to a single, settled fact. The case file now opens a new region entirely, the Indian subcontinent. At the main Belan site in Uttar Pradesh, investigators dated controlled fire use to between 50,000 and 55,000 years ago. This places India's evidence firmly alongside the investigation's younger, better supported entries. The detectives' map keeps expanding, one continent at a time. Baked earth turned up at Barnham, Suffolk, alongside Flint and something rarer, pyrite. Co-investigator Dr. Rob Davis identified the combination as deliberate fire-making, not accident. Neanderthals had struck sparks from stone here, leaving a signature no wildfire could forge. As of December 2025, this find stands as the investigation's clearest verdict yet. Pyrite does not occur naturally around Barnham. Researchers traced its source to chalky coastal areas, tens of kilometres away. That distance turns a simple spark into evidence of planning. Someone at Barnham chose to carry stone that far, purely to make fire. Barnham forces a rewrite of Neanderthal capability itself, beyond flint knapping or hearth building. Carrying pyrite tens of kilometres means someone planned a journey before ever striking a spark. That kind of foresight implies memory of distant terrain and a reason to return there. The case file now treats Neanderthals as planners, not opportunists reacting to chance fire. The case file now shifts from hearths to homes. Near Dolny Vistonis, Moravia, investigators found huts built from rocks and mammoth bones. Dated to about 25,000 BP, the settlement counts as the oldest permanent human settlement on record. Fire, it seems, had already become a reason to stay put. Deep inside Shanrendong Cave, China, investigators uncovered fragments of fired clay. Dating placed them at roughly 20,000 years old, predating the standard Neolithic pottery timeline by about 10,000 years. Fire had already moved beyond warmth and cooking into transforming raw earth itself. The case file now credits fire with reshaping materials, not just meals. The case file now records fire's most demanding transformation yet: metal. A site in Serbia, discovered in 2010, holds the oldest securely dated evidence of copper smelting at high temperature, from 7,500 years ago. At Timna Valley, investigators traced copper mining back 7,000 years, confirming the practice spread and endured. Fire had moved from hearth to furnace, and humans followed. From 2-million-year-old ash traces to Timna Valley's furnaces, this case file never delivers one clean answer. Every site added an asterisk, and every asterisk forced investigators back to the evidence. What remains certain is the arc itself: control, then cooking, then tool-making, then metal, spread across 2 million contested years. The flame stayed the same. The hands holding it never stopped changing.